Hello, YouTube. Jason from Renegade Rants Comics here. So, I've had a couple weeks. So, any of you that follow me on Instagram know that I've actually been in the hospital. So, I had to have emergency surgery. I had put off something a little too long, and because I had to go into the hospital in the ambulance, I ended up developing MRSA. And MRSA is nothing that you mess around with. So, I was in the hospital for over a week, had the surgery. They did what they needed to do with that, but I had to actually have a PICC line put in and then do antibiotic treatments for the last week, which the last one I got done today. So thank God they pulled that out, because if you haven't had a PICC line, it's not fun. So when I got taken to the hospital, the ambulance came over, and apparently the only thing I could muster throwing on was a pair of sandals, mesh shorts, and a Hawaiian shirt. So I kind of looked like the Big Lebowski going to a luau. I was able to grab my phone, didn't have my wallet, didn't grab my keys, and that kind of situation wasn't really, too with it. So while I was in the hospital, I'm going nuts, because if you haven't been in the hospital in a while, you got to pay for TV, and I don't have my card, and I was not thinking clearly enough that I could probably pull up Samsung Wallet and figure it out, which I did eventually. So I'm going stir crazy. So two of my really good friends, Trevor and Sean, they would visit, periodically, but it's a very long and lonely experience being in a hospital. So I also want to thank Up and Atom Comics, What's on the Comic Rack, um, Comic Collector Coach, for all the kind words and stuff, and anybody else that reached out that I'm missing. Richard Westfall, Chris Parker, and if I miss you, I'm not trying to do it on purpose, but there was a lot of people that reached out to me, but I appreciate everybody in the community that reached out with well wishes. But the one thing that was a saving grace for me is my friend Sean actually was able to pop in for a visit, and he brought me a bunch of trades. And Craven's Last Hunt, Kitty Pryde and Wolverine, Batman, Long Halloween, and Watchmen. And I soaked these up. Craven's Last Hunt, being able to read that, being able to jump into a comic book, which is what I've always said, being able to take your mind off of what's going on and jumping in a comic just to have that release is one of the most important things ever. The other thing I'm going to tell you guys is, do not let something go long enough that it develops into something that can kill you. If you're not right, you're not feeling well, go to an urgent care, go to the hospital, ER, call up your primary care doctor and have a conversation. Because had I done that, I wouldn't be in the shape that I'm in now. But I'm on the mend. Thank everybody for reaching out. Sean, thank you so much for bringing the stuff in. Now, I had picked up my pull list 2 days before I ended up going into the hospital, but hadn't read anything because I really wasn't in shape to read anything. I just kind of, was on automatic pilot at that point. So I want to kind of show you some of the stuff I've got. Was able to complete one of the goals for this year. Pick some other things up, and then I actually bought a couple things while I was in the hospital because of sheer boredom. So first thing that I've got is I only have one Carter Slade Ghost Rider that I picked up at Terrificon, and it's a lower grade copy, but those books from the 60s are actually pretty pricey. So after Johnny Blaze came out as the Ghost Rider, they relaunched the Carter Slade line a couple times, and they called the first version the Knight Rider. So this is the Knight Rider #1, and it's in kind of rough shape, but it's the origin story of the man who rides the midnight winds. So I got that. I have Knight Rider #2. And I have a very low grade Knight Rider number 6. So there's 6 issues, so I'm missing 3. But on this one right here, there was tape there, and somebody yanked it off and pulled the cover. So unfortunately, but like I said, low grade is better than no grade. So, and then for my regular pickups, I got Wolverine and Sabretooth 11. And I know I have 12, but I could not find the issue, so I don't know if it slipped behind something. But I also have Wolverine 13, Ultimate Wolverine 8, Ultimate Wolverine 9. And then when we were on the Fantastic Four weekend trip with Brandon from On Comics, Mike from Lunch Money, Chris Parker, Ryan from Colossus Collector, we'd gone to Larger Than Life, and they had actually sold like runs together that they put together and bundled, and they were on sale. So I had picked up the Daredevil versus Punisher Means to an End, only to find out there were 6 issues, and in the pack there was only 5. So since I wanted to read the whole story, I was able to get number 6. Now, my buddy Trevor was able to call my landlord and get into my place, brought me real clothes so I didn't look like I was also going to a luau after I got out of the hospital, and was able to find my wallet, grab my keys, and pick up these books and bring them into the hospital. And this is the one thing I had picked up that I was dying to read, which is The Punisher Red Band. Now, I have done videos on the Jason Aaron Punisher. I have ranted and raved about what they did to the character and how much I hated everything they did. Benjamin Percy's writing this. I will basically go out and buy anything that Benjamin Percy writes. I would buy his shopping list. Okay? So this is an awesome first issue. And if you haven't read it, go get it. I actually wanted to buy another copy of this. So when I went in to try to find another copy, because I wanted to have a reader copy and then keep one in the poly, because, why not? They were sold out, which is actually a pretty good idea to have. So I cannot wait for the next issue of this. Once I get a couple issues in, I kind of want to do a review of this, which will have spoilers, but I recommend this if you are a Frank Castle Punisher fan. For the love of Bob, go get this. I also have Deadpool and Wolverine number 8. Deadpool and Wolverine number 9, also Benjamin Percy. And then Helverine number 9, also Benjamin Percy. If you're getting a trend here, kind of my favorite writer right now. And Helverine 10, which concludes the Helverine run. And really enjoyed this run. Really enjoyed the character. Recommend it to anybody that's a Wolverine fan or likes Dokken. Just really, really good story. And this kind of started in the Ghost Rider run that Percy was writing, so he's got my vote all day long. Now, Halverine's not going away. Halverine's going to be added into the Spirits of Vengeance comic that's coming out. I think it's December. I have to double check on that, but I'm just kind of trying to get this out, so I'll have a better follow-up next video. But while I was doing all of that, I'd actually picked up one that I was planning on doing a video before I went in the hospital. So this is the last book I needed to complete something that was a goal for the year. So I have The Punisher War Zone number 40. So this was the last book that I needed to complete my Punisher runs. So I have all the War Zone, War Journal, all of the regular Punisher run from the 80s, 90s, and I have the miniseries. But then, while I was in the hospital, I got on eBay and I started looking, because when I was at Terrificon, I'm like, there's one other book if you're a Punisher fan. Now, Punisher started in ASM 129 as the bad guy, one off bad guy, but proved popular enough they brought him back for a couple more issues. I have one of those issues. I have the facsimile of 129 because I'm just going to tell you right now there was no way I'm ever going to own a ASM 129. But I was able to find this very reasonable, and it was actually it's graded. And the raw copy at Terrificon was actually the same, more money than this was, and it was a little bit better copy. But for this, as Marvel Preview presents, and it's not a comic book, as kind of the magazine that came up, but it's the first origin of the Punisher, first appearance of Dominic Fortune, and a Don Pendleton interview. Now, who is Don Pendleton? Well, he had a book series called The Executioner, which the backstory of Frank Castle and the backstory of the Executioner are the same story. So they kind of stole the Executioner's story and gave it to Frank Castle, slightly changing a couple of the aspects of it. So this is a 6.5. And the only thing about it being restored is it looks like the right edge of the cover is trimmed. So somebody trimmed the cover over here. But other than that, it's actually a pretty well presenting copy. I don't care if it's a restored grade. It's very nice. I'm very happy to have this and for the price I was able to get it for. So now I can say that other than the ASMs, and I do have, I think, his second appearance in ASM. I might be able to track down the third one. I don't think is overly priced, but like I said, I have the facsimile of 129. I bought like 4 copies of that thing, so that's as good as it's going to get with that. But I now have the Punisher that I want. Now, I do have some of the Mac Fraction series. I have a lot of Garth Ennis. I have most of those in trades, so I have all the stories. I don't know if I'm going to try to complete them or not, but it's the same thing with the Wolverine run. I didn't plan on trying to complete that. Now I only got 30 issues to go. But so excited to add this in the collection. And then the last thing that I got, because as I was sitting in the hospital at Terrificon, and I don't buy art as a whole, but at Terrificon, I ended up getting a couple of the trade dresses that Joe Jusko does. And Joe Jusko actually lives close to me down in the Syracuse area, and he's usually at Funky Town Comics. So I was like, I want to get some of the Marvel Masterpiece cards. So I was able to buy this for a fairly reasonable price. So these are the Marvel Masterpiece from 1992. And just love the artwork on this. So I can't wait to actually take a couple of these cards down when I go and have him sign them. But just fantastic art on this. And I also put a bid on some of the original trading cards, early 90s, before the Marvel Masterpieces. I bought them. They have not came to me yet. And when I contacted the seller, they said, oh, we forgot, and put it in. And I supposedly was supposed to get a $10 refund, which I haven't got, so I'll keep you posted on that. Now, the only other thing I'm going to say is, since we're going off on a tangent, is you also want to be very, very careful on what you buy. So while I was looking at eBay, I was like, kind of like to have a nice Ghost Rider like statue or something. Because my friend Dave, when we were at Terrificon, he bought a whole bunch of statues because he's kind of into like the statues bus. And, he'll give you a box of comics just to get them out of his house because he collects what he wants to collect. But he has some of the best figures and busts that I've ever seen, kind of thing, and he was able to get them. So it kind of inspired me. So in the pictures, this thing looked like it was $1 million. So I bought it, and I didn't spend a lot on it, but I spent more than I would have for this. Kind of a cool little figure. But in the pictures, I thought this was going to be kind of action figure size and not something that came from Timu. So just make sure when you're buying something that you actually kind of look at the sizing, because I can't fault the seller, because when I actually did go in and actually looked, he had the sizing in there. But just the pictures made it look so much better, which means that, a better camera, I probably would look better and maybe I should buy one. So I hope everybody's well. Again, anybody that reached out, um, I want to say that the comic book community is awesome and amazing. And it's always the friends that I've made, friends that I've met, friends that I haven't met, either through doing this channel or, watching their content on other channels. I love you guys. And I don't mean that in kind of like a sarcastic way or, condescending or any way that it might sound saying that, but like being able to have a hobby that can bring you together and actually true friendships develop out of it is one of the most amazing things I can truly tell you. Being able to have a conversation with somebody, um, you know, like Eric from SideQuest. He also reached out, so thank you, Eric. But like when I did his show that one time, or the live stream where we basically were talking about Magneto versus Ghost Rider. Like I can't have that conversation with my friend Trevor because he's gonna go, who? What? Why? So all I'm going to say is I hope everyone is well. I'll keep you guys posted if anything happens. I'm glad to be back. Um, Make sure you check out everybody's videos and kind of thing. And if you have any questions for me, leave them down in the comments. I'll kind of respond as I can. And I will see you guys next time.